Okay, so today we're diving into the world of government planning inspectors.
Sounds exciting.
Right. It's one of those jobs you probably don't think about every day.
Definitely not something you talk about at parties.
Exactly. But they have a huge impact on, well, pretty much everywhere we live and work.
They do, it's true.
So we're going to take a deep dive into what they actually do
Okay.
and how technology is changing things up.
I'm intrigued.
We've got some great resources from RoleCatcher to guide us.
They're a career development platform, right?
Yeah, they've got this really detailed career guide, Government Planning Inspector.
Okay, so they help people get into that line of work.
And they've got these really interesting AI-powered tools for interview prep and job searching.
So they're kind of like shaking up the whole process.
Totally. But before we get ahead of ourselves, let's back up a bit.
All right.
When we say Government Planning Inspector, what are we actually talking about?
It's a mouthful, right?
It is, and the guide uses pretty formal language.
Yeah, it can sound a bit bureaucratic.
So how would you explain it in plain English?
Okay, imagine this. A developer wants to build something big, like a new shopping mall.
Sounds good on paper, more places to shop.
Right, but what if they want to build it right next to a quiet residential neighborhood?
Or like right on the edge of a nature preserve.
Exactly. And that's where the planning inspector comes in.
They're the ones who say, hold on a minute.
They're like the referees of the development world, making sure everyone's playing by the rules.
And that those rules actually work for the people who live there.
Exactly. They're thinking about the long-term effects on the community.
Not just if a building meets the building code.
Right. It's about the bigger picture.
Like, how's this development going to impact traffic?
What about the environment?
Will it fit in with the local architecture?
All those things.
So it's a lot more than just checking boxes on a form.
Way more.
One thing that really jumped out at me in the guide,
Yeah.
they said inspectors need a deep understanding of law and geography.
Interesting combo.
Right. It is. I get the law part, but geography.
It makes sense when you think about it.
Tell me more.
Well, they have to assess if a site is even suitable for development in the first place.
Okay, so, like, is it in the flood zone?
Exactly. Or, what about the soil quality? Could building there cause problems with water runoff?
Wow, so they need to know about the actual physical environment.
Absolutely. They're bridging the gap between the idea on paper and the reality on the ground.
That's a really good way to put it. And speaking of being on the ground,
Uh-oh, what does the guide say about that?
they actually have to do site visits.
Oh, so they're not just stuck in an office all day.
Nope. And the guide mentions they can involve challenging conditions.
What does that even mean?
I'm picturing, like, trekking through the mud and the rain to assess a building site.
Wow, that's dedication.
You've got to be passionate about this stuff to brave the elements like that.
It shows you can't get a complete picture just from looking at blueprints.
Definitely not. And it's not just about the physical environment either.
Oh, right. There's the whole people factor.
The guide really stresses how important it is for inspectors to be good communicators.
Which makes sense because they're dealing with a lot of different stakeholders,
Developers, residents, local officials.
all with their own agendas.
Exactly. And you've got to be able to explain these complex regulations in a way that everyone can understand.
And sometimes you're dealing with people who have very different visions for a community.
That's got to be tricky, trying to find that balance.
It's a real balancing act. They might need to persuade a developer to make changes.
Or mediate disputes between neighbors.
Or explain to city council why a particular project just doesn't work.
They're problem solvers as much as they are rule enforcers.
That's a really good point.
And that takes a really unique skill set, right?
Definitely. And speaking of
This
skills...
is where RoleCatcher comes in, right?
Exactly. See, the career guide also talks about the importance of professional development.
Okay.
And that's where technology is really starting to change the game.
All right, so we're talking about how to even land a job as a planning inspector.
Exactly.
This is interesting stuff because I know a lot of people listening are probably looking for ways to boost their careers.
For sure.
So what does RoleCatcher do that's so different? So how does it work? Does their AI, like, match you with your dream job or something?
It's not exactly a dating app for your career.
Okay, but it helps you find the right opportunities.
That's the idea. One of the things RoleCatcher focuses on is this idea of a skills gap.
Okay, so like the difference between the skills you have and the skills you need for a certain job.
Exactly. And their software can actually analyze job descriptions alongside your resume.
Whoa, so it tells you what you're missing.
Pretty much. It takes the guesswork out of figuring out what hiring managers are looking for.
That's huge. Instead of just hoping you have the right qualifications, you know exactly where to focus your efforts.
Right. Like, it might suggest online courses you can take.
Or even volunteer opportunities that would boost your resume.
It's all about giving you a clear roadmap for professional development.
That's really cool. But let's talk about actually getting in front of those hiring managers.
The interview.
Yeah. I mean, for a job like this with so much responsibility, I imagine the interviews are pretty intense.
They can be. The guide actually gives examples of some common interview questions.
Like what?
Well, a lot of it focuses on your ability to think critically and communicate clearly under pressure.
Which makes sense. You have
Yeah.
to explain complex regulations, defend your decisions.
And you've got to do it in a way that makes sense to people who might not be familiar with all the technical details.
So how does RoleCatcher help with that?
This is where it gets really interesting. They have this whole AI-powered interview prep feature.
Okay, so like a virtual interview coach.
Kind of. It's like having a library of potential interview questions tailored specifically to the role of a planning inspector.
So it's not just giving you generic advice, it's really specific to this field.
Exactly. And it's not just about the questions themselves. RoleCatcher's AI can actually analyze your responses.
Yeah.
You can record yourself answering practice questions.
And it gives you feedback.
Yep. It'll tell you if you're rambling, if you're not making eye contact, all that stuff.
Wow. It's like having someone in the room with you giving you pointers on how to improve.
It's all about helping you build confidence and put your best foot forward.
That's amazing. Okay, so you've aced the interview, but what about the actual job search itself?
Ah, yes.
You know, the guy talked about how important networking is for aspiring planning inspectors.
Right. It's all about who you know, right?
Well, that's how it usually works. Does RoleCatcher change that at all?
In a way, yes. See, with RoleCatcher, you create this really detailed profile.
With your skills and experience and everything.
Exactly. But here's the cool part. Employers can actually search for candidates on RoleCatcher's platform.
Wait, really? So instead of you having to find them?
They come to you. It's like having a digital headhunter working for you 24/7.
That's incredible. It flips the whole job search process on its head.
It definitely makes things more efficient.
And probably a lot less stressful for job seekers.
I would imagine so.
This is all super exciting, but I have to ask.
What's that?
With all this talk about technology and automation, what does it mean for the future of a job like government planning inspector?
Now that's the million-dollar question.
Right. Are we headed towards a world where robots are approving building permits?
Well, it's not quite that simple.
But technology is changing fast, so how do you see it impacting the actual work that planning inspectors do?
That's what we'll explore next.
So we were talking about robots approving building permits. Is that where we're headed?
I don't think it'll be quite that dramatic, at least not anytime soon.
Okay, so no robot overlords just yet.
Not that I've heard of.
But seriously, how do you see technology changing the day-to-day work of a planning inspector?
Well, think about all those site visits they do.
Right. Trekking through the mud, braving the elements,
What if instead of that, they could put on a VR headset?
and like visit the site virtually?
Exactly. They could walk the streets of a proposed development, see how the sunlight hits the buildings.
Oh, wow. That would be amazing for visualizing the impact on the surrounding area.
It's not just about visualization either. They could layer in real-time data, like noise pollution levels, traffic patterns.
So they'd be able to see potential problems before a single brick is laid.
Exactly. It would completely change the game in terms of proactive planning.
And what about all those community meetings they have to have?
That's another area where VR could be really powerful.
Instead of just showing people static maps and diagrams,
They could actually experience a proposed development firsthand.
walk through a virtual park, stand on a virtual street corner, that kind of thing.
Precisely. It could make the whole process so much more transparent and engaging.
And hopefully lead to better outcomes for everyone.
That's the goal, right?
It is. But I have to admit, part of me wonders if all this technology is going to make human planning inspectors obsolete.
It's a fair question, one that comes up a lot.
So what's the answer? Are we all going to be replaced by algorithms?
I don't think so. At least I hope not.
Why not?
Because there's a certain wisdom that comes from human experience.
Okay.
That ability to weigh competing interests, to see the big picture and the details.
To understand the nuances of a community and what it truly needs.
Exactly. And let's not forget the human element of communication and collaboration.
Planning isn't just about buildings, it's about people.
Exactly. It's about building relationships, understanding different perspectives, finding creative solutions.
Those are all things that require a human touch.
Absolutely. Technology can be a powerful tool, but it's ultimately the human element that will always be at the heart of this profession.
I like that. It's not about technology replacing humans, but about technology empowering humans.
Exactly. Giving them the tools and insights they need to make even better decisions for the communities they serve.
This has been a fascinating deep dive.
It really has.
We've covered a lot of ground. from the day-to-day realities of being a planning inspector to the potential impact of cutting-edge technology.
And we've learned a lot about how RoleCatcher is helping to shape the future of the profession.
They're doing some really innovative work.
They are.
So if you're interested in a career that combines analytical thinking, creativity, and a passion for building a better future,
Government planning inspector might just be the perfect fit.
and if you're looking for the tools and resources to help you land your dream job in this exciting field,
Be sure to check out RoleCatcher,
they're changing the game when it comes to career development.
for sure. And who knows what the future holds for this field.
That's the exciting part. As technology continues to evolve, it's only going to create even more possibilities.
It's an exciting time to be involved in shaping the communities of tomorrow.
It really is. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep imagining the possibilities.